Dear startup friends, dear entrepreneurs, dear community of technology companies in London and around the world, welcome. Welcome to our August edition of Startup Grind in London, even though we are here with you virtually. We would like to tell you a bit more about what's going to be waiting for you today. Today, we will have two talks for you, not one, but two. I hope you will find them super interesting as we will. The first talk will be a very quick discussion about investing and the legal aspects and pitfalls which startups experience normally in during the fundraising process. And for this, we invited David Willbe, who is our long-term friend and a partner, who is also a partner at Lewis Silkin. It's a law firm which does early stage rounds as well as growth rounds for technology companies. And he'll be talking to Petar Savic, who is the co-director of Startup Grind in London. And after this first talk, we will welcome on our stage somebody who's been here before on our stage, Alex Wilhelm, who is the senior editor of TechCrunch. And Alex will be talking to Nick Brisbourne, who is the founding partner and CEO of Forward Partners, who recently made headlines by taking the VC company public. So you're up for a treat. And after, if you would like to stay and network with us, this would be great. So now, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Petar Savic, who will be bringing on his guest speaker for today. Peter, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Marian, for this kind introduction, and welcome to all of you from our lovely Startup Grind London community. We've been doing this virtually now for so long, but I'm happy to announce that very shortly, very soon, we'll be moving into hybrid events, welcoming you again into physical and hybrid forms. As Marian mentioned, we've been working with Lewis Silkin for many years now, and David Willbe has been supporting our community with all the things legal, and point of this first 15 minutes talk is going to be about these pitfalls that we are facing. So I would like to invite David to the stage to introduce himself and tell us more about how he works with businesses. David, welcome.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for that. Yeah, I've been coming to Startup Grind pretty much since the start of the London chapter. I think I missed the first couple, but more or less day one. So look, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I can't wait to get back in the room whenever that happens and meet the community face to face again. I've been working with tech companies for longer than I care to admit at this point. And as Marian said, I work with them at every stage. So we do early stage financing transactions, we do middle rounds, and we also do exit stuff. So just last week, had a sale transaction that went through, got some IPOs coming up later in the year, but at the same time, I'm talking to people who are raising their seed.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm wondering, have you noticed any patterns, or what are the common issues when it comes to each stage of startup lives, whether that's an early stage or exit? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's the reason why I like working at every stage. So, most people in their legal career don't get as far into as I am into mine, and still keep coming across a variety of issues and lots of different things to keep them interested. As lawyers, we tend to kind of sit at one stage of a growth life cycle. We might just do exits, or we might just do seed funding or something like that. And so we're seeing the same things over and over again. What I really love about working with startups is, lots of different things as you grow, lots of different things that happen at every stage, and just trying to get my head around each of them and work with the founder client or work with the investor to try and solve those problems as we come across them.
I see. Well, are there any kind of particular things that you see in early stage founders? What are the legal pitfalls when they're just starting out?
Yeah, so the early stage is really interesting, as you can imagine. I mean, one of the really great things that's happened over the past few years is that a lot of the stuff that you used to have to go through me or someone like me to do, like incorporating a company or, you know, looking at your constitution, issuing shares, that kind of thing, you don't have to come to me anymore. There's a lot of ways of doing that self-service. What I would say, though, the pitfall that that's created that never used to exist is all of these self-service options. They give you a lot of buttons to push, but they don't always label what those buttons are. So if you go to Companies House, you know, it'll ask you lots of questions about, well, do you want articles of association? What do they look like? You know, do you want to use the model articles or not? And actually, where I see people sort of trip themselves up more often than not is they want to do it self-service. They want to keep it simple. They want to keep it cheap, and that's fine. No problem with that. But then they also want to try and push some of those buttons and see what happens. And actually, you know, having multiple classes of share or having, you know, complicated shareholder arrangements at that very, very early stage when you're not going to take any advice, you're not going to talk to someone like me about it, that can be quite dangerous. Like, you can set yourself up for real problems down the line if you don't get those things right. So my advice on how to avoid that one is just default. Whatever the simplest default option is on whatever platform it is you're using, tick that. And then later on, when you know, when you're raising some money or you've made a load of cash from selling to customers, then you can go back and you can pay someone to dig into it, and then you can try and optimize for different classes of share or whatever it is that you want to do. But in that first instance, I always advise people, you know, if you're not going to take advice, it's all there for you. You can do it, but default, simplest option all the way across the board. Keep it nice and simple, and then you can come back and add the complication later on. That's what people like me are paid for.
Of course. So main takeaway for early stage founders, it's keep your cap table short and simple, don't complicate it, and that's a very good one. Thank you. So let's say once, you know, these early stage founders move into early stage fundraising, you know, what happens then? Are there any things that could go wrong? You know, do they give out too much of their equity, or what's usually kind of thing that goes wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about this. There's a variety of different things. Let me put it under one general heading, which is not caring enough about the rest of the term sheet apart from the valuation. And look, I completely get it. You know, those are some big numbers. It's incredibly validating. And you know, you're an early stage founder, and suddenly you've got this piece of paper that says that somebody's going to write you a lovely big check, and this is, you know, what they value your equity at. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I get wanting to optimize valuation, of course, but you know, ultimately the valuation, and sorry to put it like this, but the valuation is almost a trivial issue, because that's going to happen, and actually fine-tuning that a little bit up or down by the time you're doing your exit is not really going to make the difference. Mm-hmm. What's going to make the difference is, how is your company going to run from now on? You know, and that's what the rest of the term sheet is about. So all of those you know, confusing terms that are in there about liquidation preference and drag along rights and investor vetoes and preemption on share transfers, you know, those things are going to make a massive difference. Now, ultimately, you know, this is again one of those inflection points. You know, do you get somebody involved to come and look at that, or do you just try and do it yourself, and then only sort of get legal advice once you've got a term sheet and you just need something implemented? I think, you know, obviously my bias is obvious, but I appreciate there's not always unlimited cash available to be able to do that. But if you are going to do it yourself, my advice would be, you know, yes, of course, look at the valuation and spend time on the valuation, but you do have to try and dig into some of those other terms as well. And ultimately, you know, the big red flag for me is always when people refer out in the term sheet to other documents. They put in, you know, 5 things, and then they say, oh, and the rest is all going to be as in the standard terms that are over there somewhere, because no founder ever looks at them, ever. So there could be all kinds of monsters hiding in that particular cupboard. And my strong advice would be, go and have a look. Try and understand it. And, if you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. But do dig into those things.
So that means that potentially valuation sheet at these early stages of funding is determined by lead investor or anchor investor in that way. And then term sheet, I guess, has to follow with every other smaller one that joins the funding round.
Yeah, that's it. You generally have a lead or an anchor, as you say, and you would negotiate the terms of the investment with them. And then, essentially all of the smaller investors who are coming in alongside them, they would come along and they would effectively be presented with the terms and, told, this is what we're doing. Are you in? And if so, for how much? So it is, that is the key sort of time really in the funding round when you're, cloistered away with your lead investor, talking about what life is going to look like after that investment round.
Yeah. So what's it? How does it look like actually? Do problem change after those early hurdles and then scaling, or they stay same? What are the problems then?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because everything scales, right? As you get that cash in and everything starts to build, everything scales, and the legal problems that come along with those things scale as well. And people sort of don't necessarily think about that. So prime thing that you do after you've got some early funding in, you go out and hire a team, right? And that's that's maybe something that you weren't able to do before. Maybe you had freelancers or whatever, but good news, you can get employees now. That comes with a whole raft of sort of different legal issues that maybe you didn't have to deal with before, because employees have rights and you need to have a parental leave policy and you need to have anti-bribery provisions and things like that. And the same is true across the board. So, if you're a B2C startup, for example, suddenly you're trying to sell to bigger customers. Yeah, you've got the money in, you're generating your leads out of your sales pipeline, and you're going to, potentially big contracts. Well, they're going to start flinging their contracts at you. They're not going to just take whatever it is that you serve up to them. And you've got to develop a procedure within the business for, well, how do I tell if this is all right or not? Is there really any scope in here for me to negotiate? What does it do to my IP? Are there any nasty terms in there that I need to worry about? So as you scale, it becomes a series of decisions and quite a wide variety of decisions. Whereas in the early stage, your decision might be, do I get a lawyer or not, right? If you're doing a fundraising transaction, that's one thing, and you either do or you don't. As you grow, I think you have to be a lot more judicious about where you decide to take advice. And you have to decide, where am I going to spend some money? Because I've got a bigger problem here and it's crucial to my business. I need to keep my people happy, or I need to make sure that this customer agreement is fine, or those sorts of things. And which of those things are you going to keep self-serving on effectively? Keep doing yourself until again you get bigger and you've got the funds to come back and have a look.
Amazing. So when you get really big, and which is a big one, well, what happens with the exit? Well, what are the things that could go wrong with an exit, whether that's M&A or going public or?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I see go wrong with either of those types of transaction actually, and it's a sort of natural instinct, I think. So both of those procedures start off with a thing called due diligence, and investors do it too, but buyers and the various banks on an IPO will really do it in huge amounts of detail. And I found I think a natural instinct for anyone is to sort of hide the problem and hope that by the time you get a little bit further down the line, people are committed to the process, they're committed to the purchase, they're committed to the IPO, whatever it is. And so you can say, oh, well, actually, lads, by the way, we've got this problem here. Sorry, just didn't think of it. Oh. And you hope that it's not going to be a problem. And it sort of makes sense. But every time I've seen that tried, it's failed miserably because, those processes, and the same is true with an investment too, but those processes are all about trust. Trust with the buyer, trust with the bank that's taking you to market, and you actually sacrifice a huge amount of that by burying that issue. It's so much better to bring it up at the start. And then people can work out how to structure the transaction so that it's not such a problem.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's time for us to wrap up now. So I would just ask you if you can please tell us what's happening new at Lewis Silkin. What's this Cube plug all about? I heard of it. So if you can
Yeah.
share this as a closing, I would be really grateful.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, neat segue. And so yes, so we're in soft launch at the moment. I'm told that's a term that I'm not sure I entirely know what it means. But if people want to have a look at our startup initiative, it's called the Cube by Lewis Silkin. So it's at cubebyls.com. And basically, what we're trying to do is share some of these insights. We're breaking it down into the stages that you and I have just talked about: start, raise, grow, and exit. And we're just trying to, put it out there, what we can help with, what we can't help with, and actually make a lot of our know-how, kind of available for people to read up and hopefully avoid some of those pitfalls for themselves.
Amazing. Well, I can say thank you very much, David, for sharing these words of wisdom. I hope our community learned something else.